play something? Yeah? You want to play something? Yeah, play something for our fans. Play something! Come on! Stay tuned.
Check, 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 check. Check 1, 2. Check 1, 2. Check 1.
I mentioned that we have coffee and tea served in the lobby. There are waitresses passing around. They could bring to your desk, or you can pick yourself a warm cup of tea or coffee. We'll be starting in a few minutes. Thank you.
cannabis. Doctor say make a pop one of this. Make me fly like say I'm Aladdin. Come bring some kind melodies. Oh, mama, myself no do past like this. So many things inside of my jeans. Slide down, DBTs, DBTs.
is going to be shared in a few minutes. This is a very big milestone that just barely a year ago, we launched the first report, and in keeping with the EITI requirements, we are launching the second today. We have a program in the parcels that were shared with us. We've lost a few minutes, which we put to use by having tea, but we shall have our program is going to be the national anthem for Uganda and for East Africa, after which we shall hear from the EITI Secretariat Coordinator to welcome us, and then the opening remarks from the chairperson of the EITI Secretariat or his representative, a few speeches, a video clip on the report that we are launching, and then official launching of the report. After that, we shall have a panel discussion where members of the multi-stakeholder group, which put together this report with assistance from the independent administrator, will share with us their different perspectives. We'll have members from civil society, members from industry, members from government, and mining companies and oil companies to share with us their take on the report and what they see going forward as those who sit on the team that is driving EITI in the country. And we hope by 12:30 we shall have closing remarks, and then we have lunch and depart at will. So without further ado, I would like to request that we all rise for the anthems. Thank you very much. We can take our seats. Midst us, we have the Minister of State for Finance in charge of planning, Honorable Amos Lugolobi. You're welcome, Honorable. We also have the champion for EITI and Minister of State for Energy and Mineral Development, Honorable Peter Lokeris. Thank you for being with us, Honorable. We also have His Excellency Jan Sadik, the Ambassador for European Union Delegation to Uganda. Thank you very much. Yeah, we have representation from the different stakeholders that work on EITI, that is the private sector in the mining industry and also petroleum. We have government agencies that support work on extractives, and also civil society, all represented here today. I would like to take this opportunity to now call Mr. Sol Ongaria, the coordinator for EITI in Uganda, to come and welcome us. Let's welcome Sol.
The Honorable Ministers present, the Honorable Minister of State for Finance in charge of planning, the Honorable Minister of State for Energy and Mineral Development, Your Excellencies, the ambassadors and commissioners present, the Honorable Members of Parliament present, development partners, senior government officials, CEOs of companies, representatives of civil society, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen, I welcome you to the launch of the second EITI report of Uganda, and I extend my greetings to you all in your various capacities as stakeholders of this EITI process. It is with great pleasure that I welcome you to this important event where we are launching yet another EITI report following the first report that was produced and launched last year. For the benefit of everyone, I would like to give a brief explanation of what EITI is and the reason that we are here today. As most of you know, Uganda has embarked on a number of projects that are aimed to commercially exploit its petroleum and mineral resources. It is anticipated that exploitation of these resources will generate a lot of revenue to develop and improve the quality of services to the citizens of the country. As we plan to develop our extractive industries, it is important that we consider putting in place strong structures and institutions that can enable us manage our resources and revenues. Government has therefore taken steps to put in place a number of instruments, including the National Oil and Gas Policy, the Public Finance Management Act, Petroleum Exploration, Production and Development Act, Mining and Minerals Act, and all these geared to strengthen the way we manage our extractive industries. However, key to note is that all these frameworks highlight the need for transparency and accountability in the way that we manage the resources and revenues from the extractive sector. I would also want to add that the National Development Plan goes a step further and recommends the EITI as the appropriate tool for government to adopt in order to enhance transparency and accountability in the extractive sector. EITI, in full, is Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, and it is a global framework used to administer transparency and accountability in the extractive industries. In 2019, Cabinet decided that Uganda should join the EITI, and in 2020, Uganda was admitted to the EITI. The EITI is a multi-stakeholder-driven initiative that requires collaboration among institutions of government, civil society, and the private sector. I wish to emphasize that Uganda is implementing the EITI through locally established structures composed of a multi-stakeholder group with stakeholders from various constituencies, including representatives from government, civil society, and the private sector. The multi-stakeholder group is responsible for overseeing the EITI implementation process, and with support from government and other development partners, including the EU, Natural Resource Governance Institute, Accord, and many other development partners, a lot of progress has been achieved in the process of implementing EITI. I therefore want to congratulate us all as stakeholders of the EITI and the multi-stakeholder group for the achievements we've made to date, including this milestone of launching the EITI report. Once again, I would like to welcome you all to this launch, and I hope this engagement inspires discussions that can enable us strengthen the way we manage our extractive industries for purposes of developing our country. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ongaria, for those welcome remarks. Also with us this morning is the Auditor General of Uganda. Let's welcome him. Thank you. We also have the Chairperson of the Parliamentary Committee on Natural Resources. Let's welcome him. And we have the Commissioner for Petroleum in the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Development. Let's welcome him as well. Thank you. So we are now going to listen in from the Chairperson of the EITI in Uganda. The Chairperson delegated a member of the multi-stakeholder group, Mr. Siraj Magara, to represent him. Let's welcome Siraj.
Thank you so much, Master of Ceremonies. I have the pleasure to represent Mr. Moses Kagwa, who is not here for official duties, and I'm going to pass out his statement to this congregation. Honorable Peter Okeris, the Minister of State for Minerals, present. Honorable Amos Ilugolobi, the Minister of State for Planning. Honorable Ministers who could be present. Honorable Members of Parliament. Ambassadors and Commissioners present. Development partners, heads of ministries, departments and agencies, private sector representatives, civil society leaders and representatives, the media, ladies and gentlemen. It gives a great pleasure to welcome you most cordially at the official launch of the second Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative report. This event is a culmination of an enormous effort which began in August 2020 when our country was admitted to the EITI, becoming the 26th country in Africa to join the International Transparency Initiative. And we know that currently we have more than 56 countries who are implementing the EITI standard across the world. Well, we know that we have been implementing EITI using the 2019 standard, but on top of this, in June this year in Dakar, Senegal, a new EITI standard of 2023 was unveiled, which kind of reviews and upgrades the extra principles that we must be observed as we implement EITI. But notably, the new standard integrates energy transition, climate change, and recoverable costs in reporting for the first time. When we talk about climate change and energy transition, you are aware that in a bid to exploit natural resources, then you are also creating more emissions and then posing more danger, impacting more on climate change. So it is important that we also monitor the extent to which we are producing emissions and the extent to which we are able to mitigate. All this can be done if we are able to report about all these issues. So the new EITI standard is bringing in the issues. The EITI is a multi-stakeholder group that brings together institutions of government, as Saul has already mentioned. It brings three groups: the government, companies, and civil society, with the sole aim of promoting transparency, accountability, and good governance in the extractive sector. And therefore, as we do that work, then the EI standard becomes our tool that guides us on how to achieve all this. The standard sets out the criteria for countries to follow, which includes encouraging regular stakeholder engagement, public disclosure of legal and institutional framework, as well as the procedure of allocating contracts and licenses, disclosure of ongoing exploration activities, disclosure of commodity quantities produced and exported, disclosure of revenue collected from the extracted resources, disclosure of revenue allocation process, and disclosure of social and economic expenditures incurred by players in the sector. That means that from 2020, various institutions of government, civil society, and the private sector in Uganda have worked tirelessly to fulfill the requirements of EI standards. And I would therefore like to take this opportunity to express my appreciation to the members of the multi-stakeholder group of EITI for the effort, dedication, support they have rendered to the entire process. At this point in time, we need to take some small moment to recognize the members of the multi-stakeholder group. As I told you, they are in a trinity form. The government representatives on the multi-stakeholder group can rise up for recognition. Government, those who are representing government on the multi-stakeholder group. Yes. Those representing private sector, the industry players, you're most welcome. And those representing civil society also rise up for your recognition. So ladies and gentlemen, those are the members who are trying to make sure that they steer and get good things out of this transparency drive. Since the discovery of oil and gas resources in Uganda, government has put in place several policies, as already enumerated by Saul. And one key policy, I think, which ushered us into exploration and later on development of oil and gas resources is the National Oil and Gas Policy of 2008, which I understand is being revised, alongside other attendant policies and laws that have really given a very good benchmark for us to exploit our resources. With these policies and laws in place, we have been able to achieve a lot of developments in the oil and gas industry. However, much as we have progressed well in the preparations for oil production, more needs to be done to ensure that the revenues that will be collected from the exploitation of the oil resources is well managed for the benefit of all citizens. Yes, that's very, very critical, because for me, I don't work for government, I work for civil society, but from where we come, we know that natural resources are for the citizens by the Constitution. And therefore, government holds the natural resources in trust. And therefore, for citizens to benefit, they need to understand how the entire process goes on so that we are able to achieve equitably and inclusively, that everyone should be able to realize some share of the natural resources that they hold. Secondly, we know that Uganda is also richly endowed with a variety of mineral resources in addition to our oil and gas resources. And we know that recently we conducted geochemical and airborne physical surveys, which revealed a very great potential for more minerals, specifically the new 18 targets of gold, iron ore, platinum, rare earth minerals, nickel, chromium, copper, cobalt, uranium, titanium. All these are very important resources that we think can improve our nation. The Mining and Minerals Act 2022 and the attendant regulations, which are being formulated at the present, provide an opportunity to reform the mining sector and improve revenue generation from this very sector. Because we understand that the mineral sector has a very great potential. But maybe without preempting the report, you will see that we are still taking baby steps in terms of exploiting and gaining from our mineral resources. From the administrator's report, it says 1.8% is the only contribution to GDP from minerals. And we think that that's a very, very small value. I've always compared ourselves with the Tanzania, whose minerals GDP contribution is around 10%, and we have similar geological formation. So if we can also run from 1.8% to 10%, then we would know that our resources really are contributing greatly. So that means we still have a lot of work to do. The EITI is not going to do this, but we know it's the ministries, the departments, the policymakers, plus all other stakeholders that our efforts can lead us to improve our revenue from these natural resources. Ladies and gentlemen, of late we have witnessed an increase in calls for transparency and accountability in the extractive sector. The agitation for transparency comes in part from the research that has been conducted in other resource-rich countries, showing that in many instances, the benefits of oil, gas, and mining activities are not realized due to mismanagement and corruption. It is against this background that transparency and accountability has been identified as a key tool to adopt in order for countries to avoid mismanagement and corruption. In this regard, he has already alluded to the fact that our national NDP 3 is equivocal on EITI, but also even as early as 2008, the National Oil Gas Policy also was very critical on adopting EITI principles as a mechanism for promoting transparency and accountability in the extractive sector. As Uganda embarks on the commercial exploitation of its petroleum and mineral resources, government needs to embrace the principles of EITI in order to promote better understanding of the management of a country's natural resources, strengthen public and corporate governance, enhance accountability, and provide data for informing policy making. Ladies and gentlemen, as a multi-stakeholder group members, we are hopeful that government will use the EITI process to enhance its revenue mobilization efforts through improving tax administration by identifying practices that undermine taxation, fostering dialogue about fiscal policies and reforms, and mitigating revenue leakages that may be present through corruption and illicit financial flows. The launch of the second EITI report, therefore, no doubt provides an excellent opportunity for all of us to exchange information and views on how to improve the management of Uganda extractive industries. And it also provides an opportunity to identify and resolve any existing problems that may be preventing the effective implementation of EITI. While this launch is an important milestone, a lot needs to be done. We understand that since the publication of the first EITI report, the multi-stakeholder group has various engagements to sensitize the public, and we intend to continue engaging different stakeholders to discuss the issues in the second EITI report in order to promote public debate and better understanding of the findings. Also, it is important to note that Uganda is scheduled to undergo validation of this very process of the EITI International Secretariat from October to December. This is a very important process for us. So the validation process is an assessment that will be conducted to determine the country's level of compliance with the EITI standard. In addition, we are required to follow up and address the recommendations raised in the EITI report. On that note, I urge all responsible parties to coordinate and work together in resolving the gaps highlighted in the report. As I've already mentioned, the EITI is just like a traffic light. It's not going to help us solve the challenges that we really find, but it can tell you there is a problem here, there is a problem here. So it is the work of the policymakers, the work of all the stakeholders, Parliament, to make sure that whatever challenges are identified by the report as well put in the recommendations are addressed by the responsible agencies. In addition, for instance, I beg your pardon. In addition, we are required to follow up the address recommendation raised in the EIT report. On this note, I urge all responsible parties to coordinate and work together in resolving the gaps highlighted in this report. Also, we understand that under requirement 2.4 of the 2019 EITI standard, countries implementing EITI are required to disclose all contracts and licenses that have been entered into or granted or amended as of January 2021. When we were admitted for EITI in 2020, the implication was that it's mandatory for us to start disclosing contracts entered into starting in 2021, because now we are a transparent nation. We want to make sure that we are able to disclose the contracts, because transparency, some people liken it to pregnancy. You cannot be a little bit pregnant. You are either pregnant or not. So you cannot be a little bit transparent. You are either transparent or opaque. So this is what we are calling. We are saying that transparency of information empowers citizens and civil society groups to hold their governments accountable for responsible stewardship of national resources and reduces opportunities for corruption among public officials. And therefore, we know that disclosure of these contracts will help to manage expectations held by communities, governments, and companies. And it builds that trust, because people know the deal that you have with the companies on their behalf, and they will not backbite and do anything, because they already know what is within. So the stakeholder group members are calling upon government and companies to expedite the process of disclosing these contracts and licenses for better implementation of the ITI in Uganda. The moment we have these contracts, I'm sure we shall be having plus in terms of meeting our compliance requirements. Last but not least, on behalf of the stakeholder group, I would like to express many thanks to the government of Uganda, European Union delegation, and other development partners who have helped to provide the financial and technical support to enable EITI implementation in Uganda. I also want to thank the independent administrator, the consortium of the DT Global and BDO, for the technical assistance they have provided the stakeholder group in developing this report. They are right there. I would like to end by expressing my best wishes for the launch of the second EITI report and the stakeholder group. We wait for your feedback and recommendations with much interest. All this will contribute greatly to improving good governance in Uganda's extractive sector. Once again, I welcome everyone for turning up to grace the launch of the second EITI report. I wish you fruitful deliberations for God and my country.
I think we can do better than that for the chairperson of the EITI multi-stakeholder group. Thank you very much, Siraj. As he shared, clearly the journey has been running since 2008 with Uganda committing to join, and by 2020 we became members of the EITI, and we've seen fruits in just 2 years. A number of achievements have been made. First report produced, recommendations of the first report. I think a significant percentage, those who read the first report, a significant percentage of the recommendations in that report were implemented within a space of 1 year, which is a very good achievement on behalf of the Secretariat and the multi-stakeholder group and the country at large. So we are on track, and as he says, just like pregnancy, you either have it or you don't. I don't know whether we have transparency now or we don't have transparency, but that's something that the report is going to shine light on. But most likely we are gravitating towards surely having transparency. Also with us here this morning are representatives for different diplomatic missions. I would like us to welcome them. They can raise. Please, let's welcome representatives of different diplomatic missions in the House. Thank you. We also have Mr. Edward Warden, the Regional Country Manager for the International EITI Secretariat. He's also with us. We can welcome them, please. Maybe he stepped up.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister Peter Lokelis, Minister of State in charge of minerals, honorable members of Parliament, Excellencies, the ambassadors and commissioners, development partners, permanent secretaries, the Auditor General, government officials, our private sector representatives, the members of the press, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. I'm here standing in for Honorable Haruna Kasolo, who was meant to be here and is unable to be here for other reasons and has conveyed his apologies. Good morning to you all. Let me start by thanking you for taking the time to attend the launch of Uganda's second Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative report. This event is an important milestone that has brought us together to discuss and share knowledge on the state of our extractive industries at a critical time when we are preparing for first oil production. In fact, this is also the time we are seeing a number of multinational companies exploiting, mining, investing in the mining industry in several other areas, including gold, marble, limestone, iron ore, and many others. So it is the right time that we converge to discuss the issues associated with the extraction in these extractive industries and how transparent their operations are in this country. In 2019, my ministry was tasked by Cabinet to spearhead the EITI implementation process in Uganda. Following that Cabinet directive, we have been able to steer the process along with various stakeholders in government, civil society, and the private sector. I'm happy to note that over the past 3 years since we joined, the EITI has proven to be an important forum for stakeholder engagement, accountability, and policy dialogue. As you are aware, Uganda aspires to become a middle-income country by 2040. Middle income by way of being a higher middle-income country. I think our aspiration for a lower middle-income country was meant to be 2020, and it has been passed. But I think, in our opinion, we're already there, pending the official announcement by the relevant agencies of the world. Now, Uganda aspires to become that higher middle-income country. In fact, by leapfrogging, we can even go beyond being a middle-income country if we invest well in resources like the ones that we are discussing. And this is coming through strengthening the competitiveness of business, employment, inclusive growth, and domestic revenue generation. The current domestic revenue mobilization strategy of Uganda identifies the EITI as one of the tools that can be used to effectively promote transparency and accountability in the extractive sector. As it is today, the country relies heavily on tax revenues and some little non-tax revenues. And as you know, with a budget of about 52 trillion shillings and revenues of about 29 trillion shillings, there's still a huge fiscal deficit, which we only cover through borrowing. Our only savior could be some of these resources to try and bridge that gap. We cannot continue to depend on tax revenue alone to balance our budget. Otherwise, we are likely to run into a crisis in terms of our public debt if we do not exploit these resources well for the benefit of our country. Ladies and gentlemen, you well know that natural resources have enormous potential to drive growth, development, and poverty reduction. The extractive sector plays a strong economic role in many countries which face challenges such as resource dependence and underdevelopment. So we really need to leverage this to see how we fight poverty in this country. The other day we visited the Eastern region with Honorable Okeris and Honorable Nankabiru and many others, and we observed a lot of activities taking place in that eastern part of the country, from Mbale, actually all the way from Karamoja up to Mbale, Tororo. A lot of it, phosphates, mining industries in gold, refinery industries, several of them in cement manufacture, and all these are using these minerals. Those involved in marble, I was discussing with Honorable Keris a few minutes ago, wondering how much marble is coming from Karamoja, how much granite is coming from many of these hills, but how much of that do we know in terms of their contribution to the revenues of this country? How much meets our eyes? He was whispering to me that you could see over 80 trucks carrying marble. Can any one of us tell us how much is coming out of this, especially in the quest to fight poverty in this country? So therefore, the transparency that we are talking about here, the disclosure in many of these areas is very critical, and it's good. I think the chairperson was talking about the new standard that has been adopted in Senegal, in capturing issues like climate change, disclosure on recoverable costs so that we can determine how much margins are being obtained, and then we determine how much the country, how much share we can take from this. All these are going to be very critical. And this disclosure that is coming through this report is going to be very important for us from the policy angle, especially as we formulate our national development plans, as we prepare our budget strategies. Yesterday we launched the budget strategy for the coming financial year, and many of you were there. And you heard one of the items was talking about the special purpose vehicle in the minerals sector and the scope of what it is going to be doing. So this particular meeting could discuss this special purpose vehicle and how we could roll it out using the budget strategy that we presented yesterday and see some policy reforms in the next budget. As you all are aware, experience from elsewhere has shown that countries that are rich with natural resources transform best if they put in place certain measures to ensure proper utilization and management of their resources. And that statement alludes to what I've just said. It is therefore important for the country to develop a robust legal and institutional framework for the extractive industries sector to thrive and have a lasting impact for the current and future generations. Over the past few years, the government of Uganda has developed various policies, legislations, institutions, and mechanisms to ensure proper management of the country's extractive resources. These include, among others, and they have already been outlined, the Oil and Gas Revenue Management Policy 2012, the Public Finance Management Act 2015, and the Charter of Fiscal Responsibility and Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative. The Public Finance Management Act is clear on how government should manage and utilize revenues from oil and gas. But what about minerals, other minerals? It provides for the creation of a petroleum fund which has been established under the central bank. The Charter of Fiscal Responsibility provides for a fiscal rule. We have a couple of rules within the Charter, and this is the commitment made by the government. Any new government coming in power is required to generate a Charter of Fiscal Responsibility, which is approved by Parliament. So the Charter of Fiscal Responsibility provides, among its rules, a fiscal rule that government should adhere to in the utilization of the oil and gas revenues. The fiscal rules restricts the maximum amount of oil revenue that can be transferred from the petroleum fund to the consolidated fund for budget operations at 0.8% of the previous year's estimated non-oil GDP outturn. So that's all that we can extract from the petroleum fund into the consolidated fund. These are all prudent measures by government aimed at bolstering the management of oil revenue to ensure that we achieve sustainable development for exploitation of our natural resources. So you really see that much of the emphasis is on oil revenue. What about other resources, including the water resource itself? Water is a key input in the generation of power. I should give this as an example. And when you look at the tariff structure for power, it is shared between different agencies. UETCL takes some, UEGCL takes some, UMEME takes part of it, you know. But when it comes to water conservation in this country that generates that water, that forms the input into the power plant, that one picks nothing. Is that transparent enough? So we really need to discuss as to whether this input should not be paid for. Because now we go to start borrowing money to conserve our natural and water resources. And this is why they are getting depleted. Some rivers are dry. Yesterday, someone during the conference told us River Ruizi is no more. And the government really does not have the resources to conserve these resources. So I think we need to start asking all these questions. As we probe more into oil, we need to look at other natural resources as well. So regarding the mining sector, we have a new law, the Mining and Minerals Act 2022, that provides for responsible management of the mineral revenues collected, including the distribution criteria of royalty payment to the areas where the mining activities take place in order to benefit the mining communities. But with the recommendations of the report, and I will indeed want to share as a planner for this country, I really needed to share that report and read it very extensively. So we ought to keep in mind the recommendations of the report, which aim to enable us identify the gaps and the challenges that need to be addressed in order to strengthen the management of our extractive industries sector. As I conclude, I would like to assure the general public of government's commitment to the EITI process, and that indeed Uganda